Hello and welcome to TechFunnel.com's interview series. My name is Danny White, and today we have the opportunity to talk to William Tincup. William is the president of Recruiting Daily at the intersection of human resources and technology. He's a writer, speaker, advisor, consultant, investor, storyteller, and teacher. He's written over 200 human resource articles, spoken at over 300 HR and recruiting conferences, and he's conducted over 1,200 HR podcasts and webinars. William serves on the board of advisors for several companies, including Robot, TechScreen, Be Hired, Engagedly, Work4, and Smart Recruiters, among many others. He's an active mentor with ATK Labs in Israel and Talent Tech Labs in New York City. William, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right. So when it comes to your work, what gets you up and out of the bed in the morning?
You know, I like talking on two sides. I like talking to people that are doing really innovative work. Mm-hmm. So on the entrepreneurial side, it's a gal or a guy that I get on the phone with and we do a demo of their software and I'm just blown away. Like, mm-hmm. Oh my God, I'd never thought this thought. I'd never even approached this problem in this way. Mm-hmm. And I'm left with the feeling of, you know, this is going to be lights out fantastic. So mm-hmm. I love it when people innovate. And then on the practitioner side, so a recruiter or a person in human resources, when they redo something, when they rethink something that maybe we haven't given a lot of thought to, mm-hmm. Or haven't thought about in a while, let's say onboarding. Mm-hmm. And we haven't thought about onboarding in a while. And so for someone to kind of like, you know what I want to do in onboarding? I don't want them to do anything for the first 30 days. I want them to just go to meetings, go to hang out on phone calls, explore their peers, kind of get to know people, no responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And just, that's what I want our onboarding experience to be. Like, learn the values, like actually, you know, learn the values from people that are living the values. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to do that when you're doing the job. You know, like, wow. That's just an example, mm-hmm. It's probably a bad example, but the idea that someone would look at a process or look at something and then say, yeah, let's do that differently.
Right. That's awesome. So you've been in HR for a very long time, HR and technology, that intersection. How do you think it's grown together and just began accepting each other over the past few years?
You know, I think SaaS mm-hmm. helped us along. Mm-hmm. When we were more or less an on-premise kind of a vertical, mm-hmm. it was harder for us because we had IT and the CTO and the CIO and CFO. A lot of people made decisions for HR and recruiting. Mm-hmm. And when SaaS came along, it really helped us. Not to interact with those people, not in a bad way, mm-hmm. But just not get in the way of letting recruiters make recruiting decisions about technology, right? Or make HR decisions about technology. Mm-hmm. And SaaS was is kind of the linchpin. It allowed, because we were leasing the software, not buying the software, mm-hmm. it allowed us to move quickly into like, oh, there's a new way to think of this. There's a new way to do this. Mm-hmm. Instead of having to go to the CTO or the IT team because it was going to be hosted locally, we could just buy it. Mm-hmm. We could try it, pilot it. Mm-hmm. We could do all kinds of things that we had never been able to do before. So it really kind of brought back to life in a lot of ways this HR and recruiting that had gotten, I think, a bit stodgy. Mm-hmm. Maybe less innovative than some of the other areas like marketing or sales or finance. And so it allowed us to kind of catch up, if you will.
Do you think that SaaS will continue to be like some of the glue that holds HR and technology together going forward? Or will there be another, platform that comes along?
Yeah, there's no way to know, right? Mm-hmm. So if anybody, I always have this fun conversation with futurists, or at least people that pretend to be futurists. It's like, if you know the future, then why are we talking? Right?
Why are we having this conversation?
Why are we having this conversation? You already know what we talked about. Like, it's ludicrous. Mm-hmm. Not the rapper, but it's ludicrous to think that someone could know with certainty There's probability, of course, but certainty about what's the future, I laugh at, I scoff at, and I mock generally. I think your big platforms that are out there right now that we've all become kind of accustomed to, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, will they do something collectively or individually that revolutionizes the way that software is delivered? Quite possibly. I'm definitely not going to rule it out because we've already kind of seen that. You know what? A lot of people, when SaaS came along, if you go back and look at articles of that day, of that era, you'll look at how many people are actually like, this is a terrible idea. It's a terrible way to distribute software. It's a terrible way to manage privacy and security and all these other things. And you look at them now, you're like, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So could it happen? Yes. But I would expect not for it to come out of nowhere. I would expect for it to come from probably one of these things that we're kind of familiar with already.
Cool. So before diving into more of the interworkings of human resources, you used to work for Walmart back in the day as an assistant manager, and you count Sam Walton as Walmart's founder as your career role model. What were some of the lessons that you learned from him and from your time at Walmart?
So he was instrumental in everything I learned about business and everything I've ever learned about business. And just one quick story is he and I were in a Walmart in Midland, Texas, so in the middle of nowhere. And he was I at the time managed hardware as one of the departments. And he was walking the side counter. He was walking the floor with me. And he goes, well, something to think about. He goes, how do you build trust with people? And, I answered, like a 17-year-old would, or I answered, in a really sophomore way. So he says, here's the deal. Guy comes in. Well, first of all, let's back up. Let's say you're at Kmart this week, and you notice that they have a whole section of hammers, and you're just kind of looking competitively and just kind of see how they display and merchandise. And you see that they have a ton of wood-handled hammers. It's just something that you make a mental note of, and you kind of go on about your business. Okay, fast forward, a gentleman comes into your store. You're working there in hardware. And he comes up to you and says, hey, I'm looking for a certain type of hammer. I'm looking for a wood-handled hammer. And you walk over to the side counter and you're out. Right? This is the decision. This is a life decision. This is a decision to tell them, hey, I've ordered those. They'll be in on Tuesday. I can special order one. I can have one shipped to you. There's all kinds of different ways. Like I can get that hammer that you want to you, but not right now. It'll be in the future. Or you can tell them the truth. Hey, I was at Kmart, down off, so-and-so off Loop 250, and they have wood-handled hammers. In fact, I was impressed with the array of wood-handled hammers that they had. So if that's what you have to have, I'm not going to tell you that I ordered them or that we could, ship them to you or whatever. If you need it today, then you need to go down to Kmart and pick up the wood-handled hammer. And it's counterintuitive because you think, like, why would I send someone to my competitor? That's crazy talk, right?
Right.
Well, what he was trying to drive home to me was that's how you build trust. That's how you actually, the person trusts you now, that you're willing to actually tell them the truth and tell them, hey, if you really need it right now, then, and I assume you do because you came into the store, there's a way to solve that. And yes, it's not in the best interest of Walmart. And it's not in the best interest of the department that I manage, but you know what? It's in your best interest.
Very interesting.
Should be what that should be what we're all about, right? So that was 1986, long time ago. Let's say a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But you know what? Concept still applies. Customer asked, prospects asked you something. Tell them the truth. If your thing doesn't do the thing, tell them. Yeah, we don't do that.
Do you think that lesson of just honesty and being transparent and telling the truth, do you think that's kind of lost in some of our industries?
I do, and I think we were hyper competitive with game artists years,
right?
And you can be competitive, but you can also still tell the truth. And I think we've let competitiveness and maybe even pettiness,
right,
get in the way of just doing right by the person that we're supposed to be serving. So if we're in the restaurant business, the people that come in to eat our food, those are the people that we serve, not just literally serve them, but these are the people that, listen, if they've had a bad experience, that shows on all of us. That represents all of us. So yeah, have we lost that? I think the better companies haven't, and even maybe the better product and services companies. I don't think they've ever lost. I think the Ritz-Carlton is a great example. The Ritz-Carlton is not a swipe your card, pick up your keys, go to your room type of place. And it's not just about money. That's a piece of it, but that's not its primary driver. When they check you in, they want to learn about you.
Right.
They want to know your kids' names, and they want to know where you're from and some of the things you like to see. And so there's this process that they're unpacking because they want to use that data other times in your stay. So I don't think it's lost on certain brands or certain industries, and maybe even certain products and services.
Awesome. So back to HR.
Sure.
What do you think will be the defining feature of HR tech in the next couple of years?
Well, I think everyone, predictively, you've got a lot of discussions around AI, bots, NLP, everything, machine learning, everything that's kind of how do you predict? How do you forecast? How do you take a data set that you know or one that's coming, and then how do you then make data-driven decisions? So I think we're very early, maybe the embryonic phase of all of that good work. I'm starting to see some examples of some really cool things that people are trying. And again, some of it's going to be mass failure, and some of it's going to be, and it's going to be a success. And Amazon did a bit. This is months ago now, where they tried a different algorithm to create diversity and inclusion to get a better slate of candidates, more diverse, and it backfired.
Right.
And the story, pretty much from every outlet, was that they screwed up. And what we all missed in that is that they were trying.
Yeah.
Which was
putting in the effort. Yeah.
They were putting in the effort. They were trying, like, hey, it's important if we want to hire women. And we all agree. Okay. We all shake our heads and say, yes, let's agree. Let's all agree that that's a good idea. And we keep giving the hiring managers a slate of all white men as their candidates to pick from. We're actually not going to hire women.
Right.
So if we say that it is important, if we say diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, equality is important, well, then we have to actually do it. So we missed on Amazon in that way. We should have told the story from a different perspective. Hey, yeah, they got that wrong, but just like a lot of experiments, you start with a hypothesis and you roll it, and sometimes it doesn't come back. And sometimes it does. I think the answer to the question is underneath that this data-driven decisions. So HR and recruiting, a lot of anecdotal, a lot of experience, a lot of I think, I felt, I see, I heard, all of that type of stuff. I don't want to lose any of that. I don't want to lose any of that at all, actually. What I would like to do is add that data to it. So the data tells us this. My experience gels with that. That tracks. So that now what we've got is kind of the best of both worlds. We've got the best of the data and our experience, or data and anecdotal. It lines up. Or maybe it doesn't, but now we have to explore it.
Right.
Now we have, I thought this, and the data says, like, absolutely says this. Oh, wait a minute. We've got to rethink this. Let's investigate. So I think the things that you're seeing with technology that help and inspire, enable data-driven decisions in HR and recruiting, the more the better.
Absolutely. Data is definitely one of the major areas that human resource managers and professionals are looking at. And there's also a lot of hype, too, surrounding artificial intelligence within HR and other industries as well. At what point do you think it will move out of this embryonic type phase and into a more full-grown, able to connect most of the dots and give some action points type of phase when it comes to HR?
Well, so that we don't go so cynical that it's hard for us to consume. I think the thing is that we all recognize that we're using words and using language and describing technology that maybe we don't know exactly how it works, and that's both on the vendor side, the buy side, sell side, both sides. So the practitioners don't really know what an algorithm does or is, and most of the salespeople selling those things don't know as well.
Right.
So on one level, we have to kind of just dial down the rhetoric. And as a practitioner, the advice I give is, okay, when someone says something like machine learning, okay, ask them to show you it, not tell you about it, show you live software. Show me how that does that. Well, I can't show you. Well, if you can't show me, then how do I know that it exists? I got to see it. What that does is it'll tighten both sides. It'll help salespeople give real examples, not hypotheticals, not examples that quite aren't there. Like aspirational sales is sometimes filled with aspirational goals. Yeah, and that's fine. But if we get to the show me, let me see live software, let me see it in working in the way that you say that it works, then now I know what it is. So it's helped me as a practitioner. You've made the invisible visible. And with salespeople, it also does the same thing.
Right.
So if we do that, just a simple technique, we'll dial down the rhetoric. We'll stop saying that it cures all, because it's being pawned off as an elixir to solve all of your woes. You're bald, it'll grow back hair. If you're short, it'll make you taller. Like, keep going, right? Right. So what we have to do is kind of get closer to reality and the here and now, not the aspirational, not around the corner. Just like, show me how it does this. Chatbot's a great example. Show me the chatbot. Show me the behind the scenes. What does it look like? How does the dashboard work? What does it do? How does it triage? How do you answer it? How do you add new answers? Like, all that stuff. Instead of just saying, oh yeah, it's a chatbot. I could, as a practitioner, I could just leave it there and go, oh, I think I know what they're talking about. And as a salesperson, I could just leave it there and I think they know what I'm talking about. But I suggest that we show and tell and get to the heart of the matter, if you will, and look at software. And absolutely. I think that'll help.
Yeah. Seeing is definitely believing in some cases, especially in this one.
Right.
So how can hiring managers avoid this type of myopic hiring and embrace more of the fluidity of talent that is available?
So for the people that own companies, executives that are possibly listening to this podcast, what I would say is, if you really want to change hiring, change compensation.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
So okay, from sourcing, how do you find talent, to recruiters, taking them through the paces, to hiring managers, people that need the talent in a department, division, whatever, team. Well, all those positions have comp packages.
Right.
If you tied diversity and inclusion, belonging, equity, quality to their bonus structure, you'd be shocked to learn that they'd care more about diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, and equality. So it's that simple. If we really wanted to fix this, it's a big if, by the way. Because we talk a big game. But if we really wanted to fix this, you just change it with comp. You incentivize sourcers, people that find talent, to then say, listen, we want you to find diverse and inclusive. We want you to find if it's a software engineering position, we don't want 50 candidates that all came out of Princeton that are white men. A couple of them, fantastic. But we want your bonus structure is now tied to
that.
You then putting together a diverse. Now, same thing with recruiters. You do the exact same thing with recruiters. When you pass over a slate to hiring managers, slate's got to be it's a diverse and inclusive slate of candidates, period, end of story. And you can cut diverse and inclusive. You can do all those things any way you want. Could be just gender. You could cut it into, work experience, where they went to school, age, there's endless ways to cut those things. But the point is you tie their bonus structure to them putting together a diverse slate of candidates that go over to the hiring managers. Same thing with hiring managers. Now what you do is you just say, hiring, we want you to hire the best candidate, but we also want you, with this diverse slate of candidates, we want you to hire diversely. And your pay's tied to it, by the way. Wow. So we could change diversity and inclusion, in a large part, maybe not perfectly, but we could do that if we just change comp.
Switching to job seekers, what 3 questions do you think job seekers will ask in 2019 or are already asking, and how should HR managers, recruiters prepare to respond to those?
Well, it's generally what's next on one level. They want to know, okay, outside of this bit, what do you want me to do next? Okay, do you have a clue as to how the company would utilize my skill set after I do this bit? They think in gigs. So anyone really under the age of 30, which is kind of a blend of millennials and Gen Z, they think in gigs. So I'll do this gig, and after this gig, I want to do another gig. It could be with your company in a different place and doing something different, but they think in gigs. So the what's next is a really important question to them. Old stodgy people in HR, we call that internal mobility. It's been around for a long time, and no one's really great at it. So turns out we've got to get better at it and better at speaking the language of candidates that say, hey, okay, yeah, you know what? You're probably wondering what's after this, right? All right, cool. Here's what I see for you. You do this bit, you're successful within a year. You're looking at these 3 options. Let me show you what each of them look like. Second question is, how are you going to make me better? So candidates coming in again, let's just say under 30, they know that they're good at certain things. They know that they're bad at certain things. So their questions are real simple. How are you going to make me better? That's either working on my strengths and making my strengths better, or working on my weaknesses and bringing them, up to a better level. Yeah. But it's, how are you going to make me better? Third, and which is, by the way, learning and development, another old stodgy HR concept. So we've got to learn that language. And I think the last one, and it's an important one, so I don't want to make it last as we've ranked them. It's, how are you going to praise me? How are you going to recognize me? So I know I'm great, right? That's how most candidates come into the job. I know. How are you going to recognize that I'm great? And how are you going to do that? And I call that praise, but in the old stodgy HR world, it's called rewards and recognition. Rewards and recognition, yeah. Right? So it's learning the language and being able to translate that into, and talking about it when we're recruiting them. Well, you're probably wondering how we recognize talent, how we basically acknowledge that people are doing a great job. Here's what we do. Take them through a process. So those are the general questions, and those are questions that we should be adept at answering.
Awesome. Switching gears just a little bit, you've written over 200 articles on HR and the many subcategories that are in that, and as well as spoken in numerous conferences on HR and recruiting. What does your daily writing process look like? How do you stay organized in your daily schedule?
I think it's the great writers. The great writers, define them as you wish. I think all had both a process and a way to shut out the world. So they, some of it might have been a little bit more ad hoc, but like the writers that would wake up, drink a couple cups of coffee, read a couple of papers, and put everything away. No electronics, nothing else. And they would lock themselves in a room and just think. Sometimes that's reading, like they pulled out a book and they'd read something or read something that they previously wrote, or they'd start with something that was a blank screen. And it's this idea that you give yourself the time, you invest in yourself, and you give yourself the time to come up with good ideas. And when an idea speaks to you, sometimes you don't have the time to write it right then, but like it's in a dream or you're driving or, whatever. But an idea like taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, it's a good idea. You got to find a way to capture that and then come back to it when you have that time. But I think, if you want to be a good writer, then you've got to kind of whatever process works for you. Good friend of mine, her name's Trish McFarland. She's a wonderful HR practitioner and an analyst in our space. She does hers on Sundays, as I remember it at least. She wakes up 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and she pounds through a week's worth of content.
Wow!
And she's already got the ideas. She already kind of knows where she's going, but she's given herself that time. And then she goes and puts them in WordPress. She schedules them, and it's done. Doesn't have to think about it. During the week, she can just collect ideas and, interact with the world whatever way that she needs to. And that's her process. But it's finding that process and investing in yourself to then be able to explore those ideas. Awesome.
Final question. You wear many hats, storyteller, consultant, investor, teacher, speaker, writer. What's the most valuable skill that you think you have developed?
Oh, wow. Great question. I think it's the ability to listen and be empathetic to people's, situation, whatever it may be, wherever they are, and meeting them where they are rather than trying to get them to where I am. Backwards or forwards. It's not a linear thing, but just meeting someone where they are and being empathetic about what's going on in their world. And a lot of it's slowing down and focusing just on them. So I used to be, at one point in my life, it's a long time ago now, but I used to be the guy that would go to a network event and I'd be with you talking wise, but I'd also be looking around to see who else I need to be talking to. Right? So I'd be scanning the room. So I'd be with you, kind of, up until I found somebody else that I need to go talk to. And then I'd get out of the conversation, usually gracefully. And then I'd go on. That's not really listening. You know what I mean? Like you really, like if we really were honest with each other, I wasn't listening. I was really just kind of wasting your time and my own time. And so I've learned a long time ago to shut out the rest of the world. Like I got off stage yesterday at Indeed Interactive in Austin, and a guy came up to me and had a question. And instead of thinking about the other people in the audience and the other people that were in line to talk, I just focused on him. I'm making eye contact with him. I'm listening to what he's saying. I'm trying to put myself into his situation and answer his question to the best of my ability. And when I don't know something, I say I don't know. But when I do have some advice, I give them, a couple of different ways that they can play it, pros and cons, things like that. But I think that ability to shut out the rest of the world and just focus on that person. And then instead of trying to force them into like your construct, like I like people that ask questions like this, or I like people that are really, really fast and get to the point, or I like people that, that can slow down and they want to talk about your family. Like instead of forcing your particular structure on someone, meet them wherever they are. So if they're a fast talker, great, be a fast talker. If they want to slow down and talk about family, great. Slow down and talk about family. Be adaptive in that way, but also just be. I think some of that's empathy. It's recognizing that they have something to ask you or something to challenge you on or something like that, but they have the way that they want to go about it.
Right.
Okay, respect that and meet them there where they are.
Awesome. William, this has been a very interesting interview. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with our audience. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
It's I'm easily found on the internet. Just type in William Tincup, and I promise you'll find me.
All right. Thank you so much again. We really do appreciate your time and sharing all this information with us.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Guys, thanks for listening to this interview. For these and other interviews and topics, please visit us at TechFunnel.com. You can connect with us across social, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can stay up to date on everything that's happening in the industry. Thank you.